Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I got an email yesterday from someone, and I think it's worth looking into because I think it's a case that many Canadians are gonna either are going through right now or are going to go through, if you will. This is the big problem that many Canadians have, and I know because I do one-on-one coaching sessions every weekend, and this is a very, very common case and common problem. Also, my dad is going through it, right? I'm managing my parents' investments as well. So let's go through the email. It has to do with the RRSP slash RIF slash Lira slash LIF meltdown strategy, right? So let's read the email real quick here. First of all, I wanted to offer a big thank you. I have been following your videos and I am a subscriber from almost the beginning, and your videos and information on how to create a passive income has completely changed mine and my wife's financial life. Well, that's fantastic. I'm very happy for you. That's a very nice compliment. When I found you on YouTube, you seem to be the only one at the time, now there's more for sure, that put your personal information out there for the world to see. This allowed me to put trust into what you had to say. And a few years later, I was able to retire at 58. I love getting these types of messages and feedback. I get them all the time where people are able to retire earlier than expected because of PII. I absolutely love that. Wish I found you and this information years earlier. We all do. I get that all the time. But hey, better late than never. Wife and I even visited Panama in Feb of 2025 and fell in love. Wow, that's good. Going back to stay longer. Thanks again for this lovely nugget as well. You're welcome. Coming to you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. We no longer want to battle the winter weather. Who does, right? Okay, so here we go. I have been also following Adam from Parallel Wealth and watched the video where you two collaborated. I buy into his overall strategy of the RRSP meltdown. However, I don't feel his strategy works all that well with your strategy. Kind of right about that. I'll give you my thoughts on that later. Herein lies the question or request for a video. If I am creating passive income living off the proceeds and continue reinvesting the unused portion every month, my income continues to increase, yes. That goes for any account, right? Which is great, but how does one melt down the RRSP and the RIF? Here's where I am at a crossroad. If I melt down the RRSP RIF, I will ultimately reduce my monthly income, yes, because you're not reinvesting as much. Don't really want to do that. My tax bill every year is in the double digits as I am pulling close to 100K for retirement income. I know your channel is not about tax planning and retirement advice, but I would be interested to see what you have to say about this, how you would manage this. I am sure many of your viewers may be in the same predicament as myself. And then at the end of the day, I am addicted to the monthly income and just love reinvesting and watch my portfolio grow. Yes, that's true. It is an addiction, a good addiction, I would say. Too much fun to let this go and melt it down. Love to hear what you have to say. Thanks again. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the great email. Very well articulated, very clear and concise. So this guy is 58. He's in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Obviously, he's done really well for himself. If you're at 58 pulling already 100,000 a year just for retirement income, I don't know exactly where that retirement income is coming from. Is it all RRSP? I doubt it. Maybe there's some other income sources, but the main problem is the same that everyone has. How do I melt down the RRSP and RIF? And in case you didn't know, you have to start doing it at 71. So at 71 is the age where by default you have to transfer your RRSP into a RIF. And then every year there's going to be a government minimum withdrawal. It's a percentage, and it's based on the value of your account. So if your RRSP at 71 is $1 million, you have to convert it to a RIF, and that year, or usually when you do the conversion, it starts the next year, by the way. But let's just say, for argument's sake, the first year that you have to pull it out is at 71. You're 71. Well, you gotta pull out or extract 5.28% of that $1 million. And you could do it in one shot at the beginning of the year. You could tell your broker to do it monthly. What is 5.28% of $1 million? They'll divide that by 12 and give it out to you monthly. You could do that. That's what my dad is doing right now. He's 71. By the way, so I know exactly how this works, but either way, by 71, you have to do it. So this guy's 58, which means, and by the way, you could turn your your RRSP into a RRIF whenever you want, just that the younger you are, the lower the percentage, and the older you are, the higher the percentage of extraction. If you make it till 95, that's when you have to extract the max, right? The 20%, you have to at least take out 20%. But the problem is the same. How do I melt down? I don't want to melt down because, this guy's 58, which technically means he could go another 13 years without touching his RRSP, without converting it to a RRIF, which means for 13 years, not only can he keep adding to the RRSP, if he has contribution left, of course, but he could let those investments grow and compound. And if it's in something like a basic S&P 500, it could easily more than double after 10 to 13 years, right? Because the average return of the S&P the last 40 years has been about 11% annualized, right? Just giving an example here. So I know that Adam in Parallel Wealth, his general premise, I believe, is to melt down the RRSP early, prolong your Canada pension plan till 71, and then get higher payouts from the government. The main problem I have with this is that you're gonna be if you're melting your RRSP quicker, you're gonna be missing out on a lot of market gains, especially that we know that the market over time does really well, like I just mentioned, right? 11% annualized. But either way, this guy lives in Manitoba, and he mentioned he's pulling in over 100,000, which means any withdrawals that are coming out of the RRIF, let's say he does it now, he converts, he only has to take out 3.13% every year, which means if he's, for example, generating 15% yield or something like that, you're barely touching, you're touching less than half of your yield, which means you'll have a lot to reinvest. And even my dad's 71, so he's actually needs to extract about 5.28%, but he's making 16% yield, right? So about 32% only is coming out of the income. The rest is being reinvested. So his RRIF, even though some of it's coming out every month or every year, most of it's being reinvested. So his account is still growing and growing and growing, right? So the $1 million question is, how do you do it? How do you melt it down without paying as much taxes as you can? Well, the answer is there's really not much you could do, everyone, because all LIF and RRIF withdrawals are taxed at your marginal tax rate, regular marginal tax rate. In Manitoba, if you're declaring more than 100,000, your marginal tax rate is just under 38%. You could go on taxtips.ca, by the way, to look at your province, but yeah, 37.9% is basically what you're going to be paying in taxes for any withdrawals, which sucks. There's nothing you could really do about it, everyone. So what do you do? What do you do in this case? Well, I would say that I believe in market returns more than anything else. So I would, just like my dad is doing, I would take the minimum and only convert the RRSP to the RRIF if you really have to before 71. If not, turn that drip on. You could even keep investing in it if you have contribution room, and just let that compounding go. So this guy's 58. Let's say he has, he could easily double his RRSP. So yes, he's going to have to pay taxes at the marginal tax rate later, but I'm always thinking I would always trust market returns versus, I would always try to grow my wealth more and instead of melting down the RRSP earlier, because I believe more in market returns. It's kind of like the argument saying, well, I don't want to raise at work because I'm going to be getting in a higher tax bracket. I'm going to be paying more taxes. Yeah, but net, you're still going to be making more money. Right. So I would always go for staying in the market as long as possible. I trust the market returns more than, melting strategies early. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not a tax expert like Adam. Maybe I could have him on the channel again to discuss this in detail. If you guys would like that, let me know. But what I would do in your shoes, my friend, is basically what and I'm going to talk about maybe coming to Panama in a bit, because I think that's probably the absolutely best thing you could do. But if you're absolutely want to stay in Canada, cannot leave Canada, you don't really have a choice. You're going to, all extractions from your RRSP are going to be charged at your marginal tax rate, which depends on your tax bracket and your province. There's nothing you could do about it, and you have to convert it by 71. But I would try to live off of your, if you're a retiree, if you could live off just your TFS, you and your wife's TFSA income, maybe you have a non-registered, and if that pays your bills and you could retire off that, maybe you have, maybe if you retire at 60, you could already start getting your government pension. Maybe you have a work pension. If that's enough and you don't need to take anything from a big RRSP, and you're in your late 50s or early 60s, just let it go, let it compound. It'll probably do really, really well in 10 years, maybe double, maybe more than that, just in something simple like in the S&P 500. And then at 71, you convert it, you take the minimum, and you'll still be reinvesting a lot of money anyway. Because if your yield, for example, very easy to achieve a 15% yield in Canada nowadays with all these great funds that we have, right? My dad is easily achieving, my dad's at 16 or 17% yield, right? So he's basically reinvesting about 70%, and the 30% is coming out. So his account, you could still grow and grow and grow the account. You see that 72, 73, 74. My dad, if he's making 16 point something percent yield, so all the income needs to be extracted basically until 93. Until 93, if he makes it then, which of course we all hope he does, he doesn't have to, he doesn't even have to touch the capital pretty much, right? Because the 16% is at 93. So I would delay as much as I could if you absolutely want to stay in Canada and have to stay in Canada. Now, my friend, for you, my top recommendation is suggestion, of course, is to look at leaving Canada and becoming a non-resident. You seem like you love Panama already. It seems like you hate the winter. You're 58. If nothing's holding you back in Canada, why are you even there? Because one thing you could do, if you become a non-resident, which is very easy to do, you might be able, my friend, to get the pensionado visa in Panama. So you don't even would have to plonk down $200,000 USD like I did, leave it in the bank account for 3 years. Pensionado visa, it's very easy to get. There's no age on it. You could be any age, but to get the pensionado visa, you have to prove to the Panamanian government that you get at least $1,000 USD a month. If you have someone else like your wife, a dependent, it's $250 extra. So let's say you're a married couple, you need to prove that together you're getting $1,000 plus $250 for any other dependent of some sort of pension income, whether it's an annuity or it has to be like super secure, coming from the government, or a work pension. There's ways around trying to manipulate it, but it has to be like a secure $1,250 or $1,000 if you're alone a month USD. If you could prove that, you could get your pensionado visa like that. And my friend, you could come to Canada. You could leave Canada and come to Panama, live there full time, become a Canadian non-resident, and then do like me and cash out your entire RRSPs. Liras, if you have any, you have to wait 2 years. So if you're a Canadian non-resident, you could cash out your RRSPs anytime you want, and you pay a flat 25% tax instead of 37.9, for example. So this is why when I looked at that rule, my wife, we cashed out our RRSPs right away, because we're actually paying less tax than most Canadians are paying, right? You see that even if you're in a lower tax bracket here, your RRSP withdrawals are taxed at your marginal tax rate, 33%. How much is it in Ontario? Let's just see. In Ontario, which is probably the most common viewer I have, I guess. Ontario. Come on, man. Sorry about that, everyone. So in Ontario, if you're declaring over 57,000, the marginal tax rate is about 30%, and it just keeps going higher and higher. So 25% is really, if you're as a non-resident of Canada, you're pretty much getting the best deal, unless you're in a really, really, really low tax bracket, the first ones. But what you could do, my friend, is try to get your pensionado visa. And then once you become a non-resident of Canada, you could cash out your RRSPs, pay 25%, cash out all that RRSP, then put that in a regular non-registered account, and do like me and barely pay any taxes on that income anyway, and live in Panama and avoid the winter altogether. And a lot of people are going to say, yeah, well, the number one concern you're probably thinking is the Medicare. Well, you could just get insurance. The cost of living is so much lower in Panama. You could just get insurance. There's really good Medicare here, but I don't want to go, talk more about Panama. This is just an idea for you, my friend. I'm talking to you directly. And by the way, you could do that. You could actually become a non-resident, come to Panama, hopefully get your pensionado. Then you could cash out your RSPs. And if anything goes wrong, by the way, you could go back to Canada. You could reestablish your ties. It's not like in the US where you have to give up your citizenship, give up your passport, I believe. Canada, we got to keep our citizenship and passport. I just got my brand new passport recently, actually. So you could actually always go back to Canada, reestablish ties. That's not a problem, just in case Panama doesn't work out. But, not many people go back, by the way. So it's just an idea for you. That's something I would be thinking about. I mean, I showed you the way about how to do with the investing. I would seriously consider coming to Panama. If you guys like it, why not come full time? You could always, you have friends and family. I understand that, but think about it. It could be a really, really good financial decision and life decision for you as well, especially because you cash out your RRSPs in Lira after 2 years. You need to be non-resident for 2 years to do that, but I did it. It's a 25% flat tax. Much better than the marginal tax rate in Manitoba or in Ontario. If you're in the higher tax brackets, right, you're paying in the 30s, some even higher. Like if you're in Ontario and you've been very, very successful, we all know Canada, the big problem is the more successful you are, you get punished for that with the tax bracket, right? So if you're earning over $150,000 even in retirement, your RRIF extractions, for example, in Ontario would be almost 50%. That's crazy. You could cut that to 25% as a non-resident. So just an idea. Those are my thoughts. Personally, again, just to sum up, I would always try to leave the money compounding. I trust the markets more than anything. So I personally think it doesn't make sense to melt down your RSP early when you don't have to get a little bit more government pension from Canada or Quebec or whatever provinces. I believe in the market more than the government, basically. Hopefully that in the market returns. Hopefully that makes sense. Especially if you're in late 50s, 60s, you could have another 10 years. So my mom, for example, is in her mid 60s. Her RSPs are just going to be compounding away. My dad's RIF and LIF. By the way, if you're interested to see what my dad's RIF account and my parents' portfolios and everything like that, I unveil them to PII Inner Circle members. So click that little join button. If you're interested, you could see those videos of what my dad actually has in the RIF and how he's generating 16% yield, etc. But basically, I would always suggest to stay as much as you can in the market and keep the RIF alive and let it compound. Yes, it sucks. You got to pay tax on withdrawals at your marginal tax rate, but I'd rather pay tax on a growing massive amount that the market is growing. Don't forget, it's all tax-free growth within the account, right? So I'd rather get $1 million to $2.5 million and then pay tax on it rather than withdraw or burn down my $1 million for an extra $500 a month from the government. That's just my opinion. Let me know if maybe I'll reach out to Adam and we'll see. I'll ask him about it. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was kind of informative for you, but for you, my friend, it's staring you. I think the solution is really staring at you right in the face. That's my opinion. So yeah, I wish you luck, and hopefully this video was informative for you. Take care, everyone. See you next time.